And welcome back to a Standard Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, John Ocherumbolo, and this is Chris Sapanis, my co-host. We're back with you this week. We're going to do our divisional breakdown episode, starting off with the AFC West. We're going to dive into the players and the impact they will have on fantasy. But before we get in there, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so we get all the drops and notified when we are releasing all our new videos.
Ding.
One thing I do want to talk about,
Hit that bell.
Chris, before we get into that is a couple pieces of NFL news. First and
Yes, Jono.
foremost, last week there were a couple big things that happened. I wouldn't call them too big, but obviously you went with Saquon Barkley and Josh Jacobs not signing only a contract extension, but still not signing their franchise tag. So the impact of those two teams is huge.
And then today, having a Zoom, Austin Eckler leading a Zoom call of all the running backs in the NFL. I mean, you had CMC on that call, Derrick Henry, Nick Chubb, Josh Jacobs, Saquon Barkley. Like these are the premier runners in the NFL, and they jump on a Zoom call to talk about how the pay differences. I've been saying this for a couple of years. You know, the pay for the running backs is ridiculous, and for teams to just like cut bait and move on to a younger guy there after working their, you know, having these guys touch the ball 300 to 400 times in their rookie contract year, and then just to cut them afterwards is ridiculous. I've been saying there needs to be they need to renegotiate the running back specifically on their rookie deals. I mean, it's the one position where they come primed and ready to go into the NFL. They're, you know, outside of like there's a couple backs that need to learn how to pass protect, but as runners, they come raring to go. And they don't need to develop for a year or two like quarterbacks and receivers. Like you see so many rookie running backs come into the NFL and produce early. And their prime is, you know, before in their first 4 or 5 years of the league. So these guys aren't getting these major contracts. And we just see what Saquon Barkley is. He gets done with his rookie deal. They don't sign him to a long-term deal. And they try to franchise tag him. And what's to stop a team from, let's say he did sign the franchise tag. What's to stop the Giants next year from franchise tagging him again?
Well, no, it's a Le'Veon Bell situation. There's no reason to do it. I mean, you can max, I think, 3 times on the franchise tag, but why not do that if you don't want to pay your guy more than that? And here, at the end of the day, you know, from what I heard on Saquon contract, it looked like they were within, you know, $2 million annually and $2 million guaranteed. I think someone kind of leaked it out saying it was about $11 million dollars a year, and I can't remember what the guaranteed money was, but they were close to a contract, which is great. However, I mean, you think about that, they were at the $13 million a year roughly contract they offered him that they pulled off the table earlier on after the season ended. And so this negotiation kind of got a little bit ugly, but both sides of the parties tried to do it. The Josh Jacobs side just seemed like the Raiders just stood their ground and they wanted nothing to do with signing him, and the franchise tag was the whole goal. He said he was sitting in the parking lot waiting for it to go through so you can run inside the, you know, complex and sign the contract. But besides that, I think at the end of the day, you talk about that Zoom call Austin Eckler put together, and, you know, quote from Nick Chubb pretty much says that the situation is not going to change today. Obviously, it's a one position where they're damned if they do and they're damned if they don't. They have a 2,000-yard rushing season, then they're coined and they're put on the shelf as this guy's overworked and he's, you know, beat up and he's going to be run down. But if he doesn't do well enough, they're not going to earn enough to get paid. So where does it benefit the running back at that time? We can go to a whole episode on that. But the news coming after Monday, the Giants go ahead after Saquon has an interview talking about he could say F you to his teammates. He could say F you to the team and sit out and not play a single snap. They go ahead and they get James Robinson, a guy who is a 1,000-yard rusher in a rookie season. He had 700 yards following up that next season with a couple little injuries here and there, 8 touchdowns still. Going to his third year last year, he started off the season as running back 8, running back 6, running back 6. And then ETN came in. And then he goes to the Jets. And then he gets injured. So all those things considered, the guy's a good, solid running back.
And they cut him. And then he signs with the Patriots.
He signs with the Patriots for 2 years. And they cut him. So I don't think it's an injury-related issue. I think he's trying to find the right home to be in. And I think if Saquon sits out at all, this is a guy that I like to get on my team. He's probably going to be that early down runner for the Giants because he's proven and he's got that track record. You still got Breida, who's great on third down, pass protection out the backfield. And you got like Eric Gray, that young running back who's just a flash in the pan stud. A lot of speed, a lot of power involved, but he's green behind the ear. That's why he was a late round pick for them. So there's no replacing Saquon in the New York Giants, that being said. However, in fantasy-wise, these are some names you want to take a look at. Outside of that news, Giants also signed Cole Beasley, but that wasn't really anything big. That was a drop in the bucket, in my opinion. It's another slot receiver in an already, heavy slot receiver team.
Everyone's a slot receiver there.
Exactly, except
the
Darius Slayton is pretty much like the only definite non-slot receiver there.
I'll say the other big news to come out even today was that Javonte Williams did not go on the PUP list.
And that's huge.
Huge news. I mean, all offseason we've been talking about Samaje Perine. I still think Samaje Perine is a good early season guy, and he's a good change of pace guy. We saw his production last year with Joe Mixon there, but they're going to work Javonte back slowly. But Javonte is ready to go, and that's huge news because we saw what he can do when he's healthy, and him in a Sean Payton offense is something that I would love to have a part of. And right now, like, there's so much injury concern around him that, I mean, luckily for anyone who drafted prior to this, you probably got him really cheap. Like, his value is going to go up, but you're still going to be able to get him in the 4th, 5th round.
He was a good best ball pickup for all the people who started best ball drafting because, he has that chance to boom. He also has a chance to fall behind Javonte. But to me, you look at Sean Payton, his track record, you never saw Alvin Kamara get overworked in his carries. So, and Javonte Williams is not Alvin Kamara where he's going to be the Swiss Army knife. He's going to use those two guys as he used all his backs when he had Mark Ingram out there, when he had backs before even Kamara was there. He was able
Latavius
Murray, but he was able to use these backs with purpose. And I think that's what you're going to see you're going to see him using the best of both these running backs, and both are going to have value that you want. And let's not forget, like Javonte Williams coming out of college, you didn't think when they drafted him he was going to be the number one guy. Everybody talked about Melvin Gordon and Javonte kind of being a 50-50 backfield coming in, and Javonte took it.
Well, it doesn't even matter. Like, I kind of talked about this. I did a short on him a couple weeks ago where when he was at UNC, him and
Michael Carter, right?
And Michael Carter split carries.
Yeah.
They split carries and hit their entire college careers. So it's not like he was ever commanding 50, or 60 or 70% of the carries back there. He was splitting 50-50 touches, and he was productive. And he was splitting 50-50 touches with Melvin Gordon and being productive. So
Correct.
Even if Samaje Perine takes 40% of the carries, great. Like, I love them not overworking Javonte because he can do a lot with a little.
I honestly like both those guys in the backfield.
Still, he's coming off a devastating knee injury, so like I'm still cautious on like him coming back early in the season. But I said in that short, this is a guy you're being patient when you draft him, because when he comes along in the second half of the season, he can win you your league because he can be a top end RB2.
Yeah.
And you're going to be getting him in the 4th, 5th round, but you better draft a second guy because you might limp along in the first, 6 weeks of the season before he catches his full stride.
Yeah. Let's see. Let's jump on a couple other pieces of news. One of which I want your quick.
Rashad Bateman?
Well, I was going to go into that, but this one's a little bit more closer to home for you. I want your quick answer and your thoughts. How excited or how unexcited and disappointed are you that the Jets are going to be this year's Hard Knocks?
I mean, I don't care. Like, let's go get a snack. Like, give me some Rex Ryan. Or like, I loved the Jets when they were on it with Rex Ryan. I think they were the obvious answer this year. They had Aaron Rodgers go over. You have a future Hall of Famer. You have a lot of young studs on that team. I think the connection between and seeing like the personalities of Sauce, of Quentin Williams, of having DJ Reed there, having a young Garrett Wilson. There's a lot of personality on that team, along with the veteran presence of Aaron Rodgers. And Aaron Rodgers fits right in. I don't know if you've been following any of the videos. Like, Sauce gifted him at like just an awesome number 8 chain. And he's kind of that guy. He's the old head that walks in the room, but he has a very young personality. So I'm excited. I can't wait to watch it. I think it's a distraction. I never like my team being on Hard Knocks, but I mean, listen, we thought the Lions weren't really going to be great. They were a distraction last year on Hard Knocks, and they had a great season because of it. And we got to know a lot of the players in that team. I mean, how many people fell in love with Jamal Williams after watching Hard Knocks?
No, it's true. I mean, I thought the Lions were a lot of fun to watch, and it's good publicity, I should say. But if you really dive into the numbers, it's the only thing that concerns me slightly. And to say, like, I mean, you look at last year, you had the Cardinals midseason, abysmal team that year. Lions ended up being 9-8 last year, so positive record. But before that, there were only, I think, out of 14 of the participants in history, only 5 of them made the playoffs. Like, and the Lions didn't make it last year. So I'm just saying, when you look at the numbers, it's going to be below 35% of the Hard Knocks teams have made the playoffs. You had the 2015 Houston Texans, 2009 and 2013 Bengals, 2010 New York Jets, and 2001 Ravens. So,
right.
I mean, Jets have done it before.
Championship that year.
They did it before, but I'm just saying the odds are not in their favor. So that's the only thing. Like, if the Giants were there after last year, I've been like, this is just throw away the season. Just make it a a Kardashians episode with the New York Giants.
I'm going to find every excuse just to rub Saquon Barkley not playing this season into your face.
Yeah,
after telling me that.
Well,
I don't know if you saw the video today of the Garrett Wilson toe tap touchdown by Aaron Rodgers. That's a guy. I mean, I know we're not talking about the AFC East right now, but Garrett Wilson's stock is continuing to rise.
Well,
that's all I got to say.
You did bring up, I'll say one last thing. Rashad Bateman was pulled off the injury reserve PUP list, so he is full participant, looking like going to camp, which is pretty good coming off that Liz Frank injury. That was the only concern I had. Obviously, also people have been coming out and saying how Zay Flowers is the best receiver in that squad, which not surprised by that. The guy is definitely excuse me, Odell Beckham being on the end of his career, Rashad Bateman being a different type of receiver without the explosiveness and route running ability of Zay Flowers. I fully expect that. But now that you have Rashad Bateman, I think Bateman's going to still have a great season. I think he's going to be better than you saw him before. We lost Chris for a second there. I think he was going to be better than before. And I think at the end of the day, Zay Flowers and Rashad Bateman, based on the way they're talking about this new offense, are both going to end up having a home in here. So let's take a quick break while we deal with the technical difficulty of Chris. Once Chris gets back, I will fire it back up and we'll get right into the AFC West. Okay, and we're back. Chris is back in. We kind of figured out that there was a loose connection of sorts. I don't know what you did over there.
My bad.
But let's jump into the AFC West.
There was a plug that was just a little bit shaky. Not OSHA approved.
Let's jump into the AFC West. I like this division. Well, I like 3 out of the 4 teams in this division. I would normally say 2 out of the 4, but I do have a little bit sort of excitement in the Broncos and hopefulness, I should say. But that being said, let's start off with the Denver Broncos. Last year, terrible season. When we looked at all of their statistics across the board, they were bottom feeders in almost all statistics. And you hate to see it. I think their rushing was, bottom half. Their passing was bottom half. There wasn't any category that stood out, and that was the problem. You had terrible quarterback play. You had an injured star running back. You had drop balls from your wide receivers. When it came down to it, there wasn't anything that made you excited about the Denver Broncos. But going into this year, what do you see? Do you see improvements? Do you see that Sean Payton's going to be somebody that's going to make a change? And are there any players that do excite you on this squad?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same, like, copy and paste whatever you thought they were going to be last year, and I think that's what we're kind of looking at this year, right? And you have some elite talent on this team. I mean, this receiving core is really good. You have Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, Tim Patrick, KJ Hamler, and they drafted Marvin Mims Jr. Like, I really like this receiving core. And then Greg Dulcich at tight end. We just talked about the running back. So Javonte and Samaje Perine, both really good talent. I think they're going to have to kind of wait and see with Javonte how far he comes along. But once he comes back healthy, I mean, this offense should be good. On paper, they're good. If they had some terrible play calling last year, on top of just terrible quarterback play from Russell Wilson, he got sacked too much. He got pressured. And I think a lot of it was him holding onto the ball. Like, it wasn't just like he just got pressured more so than other teams. He was just holding on the ball for too long. But I think as long as these guys, at least the receiving core, stays healthy, they got really good talent there. So I can't see. I've talked about Jerry Jeudy being a guy that, I think he can emerge as a top 15 or top 20 guy in the league. He has all the talent around him. And you look at some of these younger speed playmakers. I mean, how do you not like Tim Patrick as a number 3? How do you not like Marvin Mims Jr. to come later on in the season to actually start producing? It's the same reason I like Quentin Johnston in the Chargers. And we're going to talk about him later in this episode. The same reason we like him, you got to like Marvin Mims Jr. for the same kind of talent. Like, you have 2 other elite guys there with Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy, and both those guys who struggle to stay healthy the entire season. So a lot of these the 3, 4, 5 receivers should get a lot of play. And then Dulcich, I think, is going to be an emerging talent at tight end this year. Again, we've talked about him kind of being a sleeper in the league at tight end for if you miss out on one of the top guys, to go and get him. But Russ was so bad, characteristically bad last year.
There you go. You got it.
That you can. I know it was words are hard.
That was a big word. But it's a big word, buddy.
Yeah, supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. All right.
Oh, you almost messed that one up.
I almost messed it up. A trip. It's that damn tongue. That damn tongue. But Russell Wilson was so bad last year that you can't think that that's the rest. Like, you can't think that he was part of a system in Seattle, comes to Denver, and then all of a sudden it's like that's the rest of his career, is what we saw last year. Yeah. So let's say there is just a small bounce back. It's still better than it was last year. I mean, what did he throw for 19 touchdowns? It was awful. And this defense is elite too. This defense is really, really good. So they're going to get the offense to the ball, and what can the offense do with it? And so I like this team to really take the next step. It's one of the 5 teams that we talked about as an improved offense this year. And I think you're going to start to see that. They might struggle at times, but I think Peyton coming in is going to add some stability to that offense. So I don't know, who do you like? Who do you like from this offense? Like, so there's a lot of names that just threw out. So like, which guy do you like, and why? Well,
here's my thoughts. So when you look at the Broncos offense in general, I'm going to break down the numbers for you real quick. You're right with the whole. You're right with the whole Russ Wilson holding on the ball too long. They were one of the most sacked teams last year, if not the most sacked team. I think he was sacked 63 times, and I think the next closest was the Colts in 60, and Matt Ryan held on the ball a lot too as well. So you look at that number. If that number goes down, his passing statistics should just go up. But some of the alarming numbers were first down conversion percentage was under 30%, which is very low in the NFL. You had another bunch of statistics only having a 60% completion percentage, that being on the low end too as well. So all these things coming into a factor, like he has to bounce back and be accurate. He has to get his guys the ball, and they've got to convert on first downs for his stats to improve. That being said, if Russ stats improve, you've got to think his receivers improve. And I love Jerry Jeudy. He is one of the best route runners in the league. He's a very crisp route runner, creates separation. Him, Devonta Smith, Keenan Allen, these guys aren't going to blow away with their speed. However, they are going to create the separation, and that separation is going to get them open. As long as Russ can throw him the ball and get it to him accurately, they're going to be successful. I'm still fading Cortland Sutton. It it hurts me to say that because I think he's a good receiver in the league, but he hasn't proven that he's been the same receiver before the ACL injury. Tim Patrick was awesome, and I thought going into the season he was going to be great last year, and the injury hurt him. I'm still going to tread lightly on that. The two guys I'm looking to get in my drafts are going to be Jerry Jeudy and Samaje Perine. I like Javonte Williams. I'm not steering clear of him because I don't think he's talented. I'm steering clear with him because I just don't like grabbing guys coming off ACL injuries. I'd rather somebody else have a Cinderella story than me having a terrible choice in my pick because the guy is often on or off the field and not fully ready on the season and not explosive like he was before. I would take a dart throw on Russell Wilson as a second QB off the board, especially if I'm taking quarterbacks late, because I think people are going to be, gun shy. They're not going to want to take Russell Wilson. I'm willing to take him because the guy's done it in the past. He's got receivers around him. He's got a good offense around him. Yeah. If he just doesn't hit the panic button and he keeps his cool, I think you'll see a decent Russell Wilson season. I don't know if you're going to see caliber that we used to ever again because he is on the tail end of a career. But he's not that old. He's not Aaron Rodgers' age, and I still would trust Aaron Rodgers as well. So I like these guys. Rushing stats wise everything's gonna go up, but their defense was just unbelievable last year. I don't know if you remember the first couple games. I mean, they literally have given up 5.9 yards per attempt in the passing game. Like they weren't giving up. I think they gave up only 20 touchdowns through the air and they had 15 picks of their own. So those numbers are fantastic in keeping your offense on the field. The problem was the offense couldn't stay on the field themselves. And
that was the problem is that like they would force 3 and outs and then they would do a 3 and out. It's the same thing with the Jets defense at times, they would go 3 and out, then their defense would force a 3 and out, and then they go 3 and out, and again the defense is back there again. The defense can only hold up so much.
Well, let's see. Last year,
more this year. This is actually like in terms of team defenses in fantasy, this is a defense I'm targeting to grab early. Like there's only a couple teams that I really 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 want to get. Outside of like the 14th and 15th pick, and just wait and grab whoever's available. The Niners,
do you have to go that early though for the Broncos? Because I think people are going to think and say, well, you got to play Pat Mahomes twice. You got to play the Chargers twice.
No, I'm not saying I'm going to. I'm just saying I would value them there.
I would too. But I'm just saying I think you can get one over on your team because I think a lot of people aren't going to be thinking highly of this defense because of the opponents they will have to face. But they proved it last year.
Let me ask you this. I want to go back and let me ask you this with Javonte Williams. What round would he have to slip to for you to be like, yeah, I'm going to go grab him? Like if you're saying, he's a little bit too rich coming off a knee injury, you're not going to get him in the 4th round. Let's say he drops to the 6th round to you.
Yeah, so ADP he's dropping down. Like 4 is way too rich. If somebody's taking him in the 4th round, that's what I said. It's like, go ahead. But to me,
we'll see this week when it gets updated. That he's not on the pup.
But listen, we've seen that. Look at the history of the running backs coming out of there, though.
My question is, where would he have to slip to you for you to say, I'm going to go grab him?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Right now, he wouldn't have slipped anything. I think 6th round, I would take a shot at him because at that point, I at least have my RB1 already chosen, and I maybe already have my RB2, and I'd be happy with him if he's my RB2 as well because I'd follow up with somebody. But again, right now he's going very close ADP between him and Perine. I'd rather either get Perine at the same value, or if Perine's ADP starts to drop a little bit, he goes around later. I'd rather take somebody else in that 6th round and take Perine in the 7th. So that's where I am with that. Like I'm not going to, hammer the nail into the piece of wood because he's sitting there right for me. It's not a guaranteed I'm going to pick him if he's there pick. Even if he's in the 8th round, I'm not guaranteed to pick him in the 8th round because I want to see what values around me and how my team makeup is. At that point, it's like I probably already have better running backs that I'd rather have at that stage.
I don't know. If he falls to the 8th round, I think you gotta hit the smash button because the upside, he might come back slow in the first 6 weeks of the season, but the upside is so.
But we're also
I'd still rather have him over David Montgomery. I'd still rather have him over. I mean, I know, Jahmyr Gibbs is going really high, but I'd probably have him over the whole Lions backfield right now. I'd have him. I'd have him over a lot of these secondary. I'd have him over Washington, any of the Washington backs.
I'm actually
So
I'm a little higher on
in the
Gibson.
8th round. I mean, sure, but does he get into that J.D. McKissick role more? Like, is Brian Robinson going to come in and take most of the carries, which I think is going to be the possibility, and Gibson's going to move into a slot. But in all honesty, they have this. We're not talking about the AFC East today, but I'm just saying, I think Javonte Williams is a guy that I think you're right. A lot of people are going to just be worried about the injury, but this is a guy I personally think that, if he's there in the 6th or 7th round, I think it's a no-brainer to go and grab him because, again, he can be an RB2, a high-end RB2 when he comes back healthy in the second half of the season. And and the guys that I'm drafting there are not going to be end of season putting up the numbers or the second half of the season putting up the numbers that he's potentially going to be putting up.
Well, let me put this out there for you and put something in perspective because I took a little bit deeper of a dive into Javonte, and I think people want Javonte to be something that he's not. And listen, he's only had 3 weeks in 2021, and in 2022, 0 weeks inside the top 10 finishes for running backs. The guy has, to me, is sitting there looking at
that. That's exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah. But I'm saying he has only had 3 weeks. I expect some RB2s to have some top 10 breakthroughs and be consistently at least in the top 20. He was consistently outside of the top 20. In fact, the last 3 weeks of the season, 2021, he finished 30, 46, 36 in standard scoring. And then last year, the games before, I'm not even counting the Vegas game where he left. Those first 3 games, he was 23rd, 19th, and 33rd. And I just don't see it, especially with Sean Payton, because if he was more like a Kamara type of running back, I could see Payton falling in love with that. But I just see P. Ryan and Williams in a new coaching scheme, him coming off a knee injury, him not being RB2 caliber, him being a flex running back for the majority of the season. He needs P. Ryan to get injured, and he needs to be 100% healthy. The numbers just don't say it to me yet. And anybody listening right now, feel free, drop a comment, let me know, see what you say. But he's had fumbling issues in his career. He had it his rookie season. He had week 1 last year. I just don't see it. But that's just me. I'd rather take my chance with somebody else. I like the air game over there better.
Okay.
So, let's quick jump in. Broncos last year, they finished the season off with 5-12 record, and they also have an 8.5 game on Vegas winning. Would you take the over or under on the 8.5 for the Broncos this year, which I thought was pretty high considering where they finished last year? Vegas likes them.
I think it's gonna be 8.
See, that's the thing. You got the fact they finished 5-12 and Vegas has the line at 8.5 wins. Vegas always knows something that we don't. So, to me, I like the 8.5 line. I'm taking the under on 8.5. I'm taking the under on 8.5. Huh? That's bait. Bait, you said.
Under. That's bait right there. They're baiting you into taking it.
Yeah.
I think they finished at 8 wins.
Yeah, I think they finished at 8 wins. Here's the thing: is you look at the schedule. I'm going to pull it up real quick so we can go through each game and just see what our thoughts are. But 8 is what I think. So we've got preseason. You got Raiders, Broncos, week 1. I'd say Broncos could edge out the Raiders.
Okay.
You got Commanders at Broncos, week 2. What do you think?
Commanders.
All right, so 1-1. You got Broncos at Dolphins. Dolphins win that one. They're 1-2. Broncos at Bears. Bears. All right, so you got 1-3. Jets at Broncos. I think Jets beat Broncos 1-4. Broncos at Chiefs 1-5.
Chiefs.
Packers at Broncos. I think Broncos could beat Packers.
That's 2-5.
2-5. Chiefs at Broncos again 1-6. Broncos at Bills. Or sorry, 2-6. 2-7. Vikings at Broncos.
2-8.
2-8. Browns at Broncos. I think the Broncos could win that one possibly. I don't know. That's a tough one.
The Broncos can win that one.
But you got 3-8. Broncos at Texans 4-8. I think the
4-8.
Broncos and Chargers will split this year. So let's just say this first one they win at LA, 5-8. Broncos at Lions,
Lions.
5-9. Patriots at Broncos,
Broncos.
6-9. Chargers at Broncos. I said they would split, so give them the win here, 6-10, and then you've got Broncos at Raiders, 7-10. So yeah, I mean 7 or 8 wins. I think you could see 1 or 2 of those possibly going another direction, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
because I think the Broncos could possibly beat the Bears. So there's your 8th win in my opinion, but still. So I take the under there.
Sure.
I think 8 wins is good. Again, you need Russell Wilson to play. This defense can't win the games for them. So
yeah.
Anything else on the Broncos before we move on?
No, let's move on to who we got next.
We're going to go Kansas City a little bit.
Ooh, love
It's
it.
still, to me, Kansas City is also another team that, so there's some question marks in terms of fantasy wise. You have your definites. You have your Pat Mahomes and you have your Travis Kelce. The next question is, what are we going to do at running back? What are we going to do at wide receiver? Now, Isaiah Pacheco finished the season off as the RB1 for that team. He was a fantastic running back. He had shoulder surgery and hand surgery. Again, both things you could come back and play in the NFL the next season. No issues. It's not a lower body injury. He said he's going to be ready to go for camp in week 1. I believe him. However, we know how that Andy Reid's backfields have been flip-flopped around. He was a 7th-round pick that played for them last year due to injuries. You still have Clyde Edwards-Helaire there, who was a first-round pick for them. However, they haven't shown much confidence in him even when he's been there. And then you have Jerick McKinnon, who re-signed with the team, who was a fantastic late-season push to help them to that championship game and overall victory out the backfield as a receiver. I mean, the guy had 9 receiving touchdowns. So to me, that's a tough one to question. And then let's look at the receiving core there. You have.
Well, I talked about it. I talked about it today.
Exactly.
And it's this receiving core. This is one of the hardest things to decipher in fantasy because, you look and even a report came out today after I did the video that Justin Ross looked like he was just a new player there.
Yeah.
And so you have Kadarius Toney, MVS, Sky Moore, Rashee Rice, Richie James, Justin Watson, and then Justin Ross. You have 7 guys there.
Mm-hmm.
And Patrick Mahomes is not going to pepper a dude other than Kels. His name is not Kels.
Correct.
He's not going to pepper you with targets. The leading receiver last year was Juju, and he only had 73 receptions. He had close to 1,000 yards, just under 933, I think. But none of these guys had a lot of touchdowns. Mecole Hardman had the most receiving touchdowns out of any of them, and with 4. So the guys there, it's about where the value is, right? And so, you see Tony, you see Sky Moore, and they're probably the most valuable guys that people are drafting in terms of ADP. But essentially anyone else there you can get for free. And that is fine. Let someone else take Rashee Rice. Let someone else take Sky Moore. Let someone else take just let them take Sky Moore and Kadarius Toney because Rashee Rice is going to be there in the 14th or 15th round. A guy that I really like is Justin Watson. That's a guy you can get for free. And he had a 21 yards per catch last year. Yeah,
and 15 receptions.
He had 15 receptions and over
2
300
touchdowns.
Yards and 2 touchdowns. That's the Kansas City wide receiver core. Is a lot of guys like that they're not going to get a whole lot of volume, but because Patrick Mahomes is throwing the football, they can score at any time. It just doesn't know you don't really know whose it's going to be. I tend to think MVS is going to be the guy that's going to step into the Juju.
I agree. Well, here's what I was going to say about MVS and the Chiefs. If you look at the top 4 receiving leaders for the Chiefs last year, obviously Kels being number 1. You had Juju, then MVS, then Jerick McKinnon. What 4 things do those guys have in common? See if you can pick this out.
Oh, who is it? Kels?
Travis Kelce, Juju Smith-Schuster, MVS, and Jerick McKinnon. What do they all have in common with each other?
They all ran out of the slot?
Nope.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's a lot easier than you think. They're all veterans. They're all guys that have been proven in the league that are a tried and go-to option for a quarterback out there. And Andy Reid hasn't shown love for rookies that often, period. And the fact that you've got Travis Kelce, Juju Smith-Schuster's gone, but you still have MVS, you still have Jerick McKinnon, there's going to have to be somebody that steps up. And I think MVS is going to take over a big chunk of Juju's vacating options. He had 101 total targets. MVS had 81 last year. MVS still had a 16.5 average and 2 touchdowns. Juju only had 1 more touchdown than him. He just happened to have 20 more targets, and he happened to have, I think, like 30 more receptions. You put those numbers in MVS's hands, and you got yourself a almost 1,000-yard receiver in him as well. So I like MVS in here. I don't know where his ADP is going to end up come draft weekend. You already said who you'd like to take a shot on with Justin Watson, which I kind of agree with. I was going to say the same thing. Well, I mean, take a shot
on. It's like that's a guy that you can get off waiver wires. Like I've said.
Well, who would you take a shot on in the draft? If you're going to draft somebody out of here that's not Travis Kelce, who are you taking a shot on drafting?
Rashee Rice.
Okay.
Or Sky Moore. So here's my logic behind that. Is like I really don't want Tony.
I'm saying he's already injured. The news already came out today. He's injured.
He's already injured.
Yeah.
And I just don't think that he's going to get volume there. They're going to use him in creative ways, but I think they can use any of those guys in creative ways. Mecole Hardman was the best receiver there last year. If he was stayed healthy the majority of the season, he had 4 touchdowns and missed 7 or 8 games. He was being heavily targeted, especially down at the goal line.
He missed 9 games.
Gadget plays. And I think that Rashee Rice and Sky Moore can be those guys. But this is what I was going to say is I said this weeks and weeks and weeks ago that I don't really care who I get from here. When it comes later in the draft and I'm looking for bench players, I'm drafting a Chief. And I'm going to keep him on my team. Because if someone gets injured there, like let's say Tony's out, like if we think Mahomes is going to throw for over 4,500 yards, and it ain't all going to Kelce. So you like the pass catchers there. So if you lose 1 or 2 of the pass catchers due to injury or they miss stints or they're not performing, then why wouldn't you take a dart throw on one of these guys who can be just an absolute stud for you? And that's kind of my thought process behind it. Like this offense is going to be really good again, and someone's going to have to catch the ball there. And yeah, there's a lot of young talent there. I would say Sky Moore over Rashee Rice. I like the talent of Rashee Rice better than Sky Moore. But because Sky Moore has been in the system, won a Super Bowl with them. But Rashee Rice really didn't break out. You look at his snap time. Like he was healthy every game last year. And he never broke over a 40% snap share. And I think he only did that in
Rashee Rice? Rashee Rice?
Sorry, Sky Moore.
Sky Moore, yes. Yeah. So I was saying Rashee Rice is a rookie.
I would say that's why I would take Rashee Rice over him.
No, I agree.
Talent-wise, I think he's better.
Yeah, he only had 22 receptions in 16 games. 33 total targets.
Yeah.
So, like,
never saw the field.
But there's a reason he didn't see the field. So, and that's here's the one thing I will say. If I'm going to take a chance on a wide receiver, I'd probably take a late shot on Justin Watson. If I'm going to take a chance on a Chief based on receiving capability, I'm going Jerick McKinnon all day. And there's one stat that just sneaks out to me that is second. He was second in the team here and far above anybody else. And had he had the same numbers as Travis Kelce in terms of targets and receptions, he'd be the leader. Is yards after catch. He had 541 yards after catch. Okay. What's crazy? They say 541. Well, he only had 512 total yards, which means he had some negative plays, obviously. But you look at that number. He had 648 for Travis Kelce. The next closest guy was 465 with Juju Smith-Schuster. He's getting positive opportunities when the pass is coming his way. He may only have 50 receptions on the season. But if you have 50 receptions on the season and you're averaging almost 10 a reception, like to me, that is going to get you some big play opportunity. And he's also so used at the goal line. It was Travis Kelce, and then it was him. So if your touchdowns are king, when it comes down to it, if you want touchdown capital on that team, you go Kelce. If you can't get Kelce, to me, McKinnon is going to be the next closest guy to touchdown capital there. It's because it was so easy to scheme him into the end zone.
You literally just like said exactly what I wanted to say. Is like this just goes to show how valuable those two guys I think are to this offense. And I think that Pacheco, if he's healthy and ready to go week 1, like those are the 3 guys other than Mahomes that you want in this offense. Now Mahomes and Kelce you're not going to get unless you're in a position in the first or second round where you can go and grab those two, because those two are going to be gone in the first or second rounds.
Yeah.
But the other guys, I mean, it goes to show the value. Like, get Pacheco, and I would draft Pacheco. If you think Pacheco and McKinnon are not going to be there where you want to, draft them around early, because those are the guys that you want in this offense because they can produce. And this offense, it is going to be a top 3 offense in the league. And do you really want to play like, I did the stats this morning on the receivers, and Mecole was the leading touchdown receiver with 4, right? So it's not like these other, since Tyreek Hill left, it's not like these other receivers are stepping up and getting 8 touchdowns, 10 touchdowns. Like, it's just going to everyone. So do you really love receivers from a fantasy perspective on this team? And I don't think you can say no, because Juju was productive last year, right? He had 933 yards receiving, had 3 touchdowns, and I think that's fine. But where was he getting drafted? That's valuable, right? It's the same as like Deontay Johnson, except he had 3 touchdowns. He's worth more than an 8th round pick, but he's kind of that 6th to 8th round range. All these other guys, you shouldn't be drafting in the 6 to 8 range, because they're not going to replicate the same kind of production there.
Yeah.
Unless we think that Rashee Rice is going to be a ridiculous talent, or Sky Moore all of a sudden just figures it out, where they come in and get 6 to 7 touchdowns. But I just don't see that happening. I think it's going to be spread out again this year. I think Justin Ross, Justin Watson, they earned spots on these teams. And Andy Reid is not afraid to just be like, yeah, we're going to new 3 receivers. Let's go. Just completely sub out the offense.
Well, the last thing I'll say
revolves around.
Yeah. Well, the last thing I'll say here before we dive into what Vegas has their win line on is, I would like to maybe take a chance on MVS if he stays healthy. If he gets 100 targets and say he gets 75 catches. Last year, Juju had 78 catches on 101. He only had a 9.2 yards per target and 12 yards per reception. So MVS had a higher yards per reception. And on top of that, I don't have his yards per target there, but if you just take his yards per reception, which was a couple more yards more than that, I just like the odds. I like the odds of him breaking 1,000 yards doing that. And again, the touchdown capital is going to be tough, but if he has that 16 yards or 16.4 yards per reception average, you got to think one of those is going to be big enough for him to get into the end zone doing it. And so that's where I think he may have he had better touchdown capital and chance than Juju Smith-Schuster, and the averages were pretty much equal at the end of the season. But again, I don't know if I want to hold
really season.
Well, I just don't know if I want to hold MVS and I want to hold McKinnon. But, if I get Kelce, yeah, sure, I'll take McKinnon or MVS as another chance, because I know I have a guarantee, and then I have a chance to get another guy on a team that's probably going to throw for 5,000 yards. You want some of that.
Right. I mean, one of the first videos that we did, the first shorts that we did was about, the top 5 guys outside the 100 ADP. Mm-hmm. And MVS was like 183. And it's crazy because he really is. He's a veteran there. He can run all the routes, and he's a deep guy. He's a bigger target too. Like, what I don't see where anyone else is going to really compete for his targets now that Juju's gone. So at least at the wide receiver position, Tony maybe, but Tony can't stay healthy.
Yeah.
And Tony, like, Tony only had 19 receptions
Well,
last year.
but he wasn't used downfield like a big receiver, and he wasn't the same way with the Giants either. He's going to get those shorter plays over the middle. He's going to get those short screen plays, those plays on the outside. He's going to get open because he's a freak with fast twitch ability. But that being said, it didn't take him into a place where he was far and above the best receiver on that team. He's got capability to be a fantastic receiver, but he's still himself. He had 14 catches on 17 targets. So I love the ability for him to catch the ball. When he's healthy, he will catch it. He's got great hands. He had 2 touchdowns. Again, he had a 12.2 yards per reception average. But to me, you're not going to find that big 50-something yard play out of Kadarius Toney like everybody's going to expect him after he showed that one big game his rookie year against the Cowboys. I think you're going to see the bigger play from MVS.
He told the Giants.
Oh, I don't care.
You're just mad because he told the Giants and all their fans to F off.
No, I'm mad that. Well, actually, I'm not mad anymore because we turned that into Darren Waller. So I'm hopeful, but I'm just mad because we took a first-round pick on the guy originally. So
another guy that's only going to play 4 games.
Oh my God. Well, Vegas has the Chiefs at 11.5 wins.
I'll get you back.
Vegas is the Chiefs at 11.5 wins. What are your thoughts on that? They had 14 last year. They were fantastic.
Over.
I would take the over as well. They have a tougher schedule, I feel like, this year. I looked at it a little bit. There's a couple of games that could go either way, but if they're rolling halfway through the season, I could see them beating Buffalo week 14. I could see them beating Cincinnati week 17, depending upon where it is. A couple early on season ones that may be tough, week 9 against Miami before their bye week. That's a game at 9:30.
Week 5 against the Jets.
9:30 a.m. What is that? Is that a London game? So
the Jets on that game.
Yeah, you got Jets week 4. You could have a shootout at Minnesota week 5. So there's a couple that could go either way, but for the most part, I don't see them, except maybe the Chargers being the only one that could split a game with them. I don't see them being really beaten by anybody in their division really heavily. Like, you really have to surprise me in their division. So that being said, moving on, staying in this division, obviously. Again, we're talking about the AFC West. Let's talk about the Raiders. Raiders last year, brutal season at 6-11. It was a tough one to watch because everybody was so hopeful. That being said, they weren't terrible for fantasy. If you had Josh Jacobs or if you had Devontae Adams, you were rolling in your leagues because those guys showed up and showed up big. So to me, I still have faith in Devontae Adams. Jimmy G is going to be throwing the ball instead of Derek Carr. I don't love that, but that doesn't help me shy away from Devontae Adams. He's still one of the best receivers. We had him as our number 5 receiver in our rankings. I still like him. If I'm at the end of the draft in terms of 10, 11, 12, there's probably a good chance I'm grabbing him at some point. Or if I'm on the return in the middle and he falls down to me, I'm going to grab him because he's just a touchdown machine and he gets open. And he's, to me, one of the best red zone threats out of those top guys. Him and Jamar Chase out of the top probably 7 wide receivers they're the best red zone threats. They're going to be open in the end zone and find opening, and they're targeting the end zone more than the other guys. So I like that. I think Josh Jacobs, if he plays, is another great option. I think people are going to be scared of it until we find out if he's not going to sit out. So he could slip down in drafts, and that's one of the ones where you take a shot. Hey, maybe he plays, maybe he doesn't. But if he does, you hit a home run. Jimmy G is not on my draft list. I just don't like what he can do. He can give you your 20 points that you need here and there, but there's other quarterbacks that have higher ceilings. And then to me, the tight end role, I know Jimmy G loves his tight ends. You have Michael Mayer out there, the rookie, but you also have a little bit more crowded out there. What is it? OJ Howard is there now as well.
And Austin Hooper.
So you look at it all. I just don't know if I want to take a shot late on any of those guys, especially a rookie. But
listen, I think I like the weapons here. Like, they got weapons. I think
they do.
a more talented group than they have. Jacoby Myers is a number 2. Hunter Renfrow is still in the slot. Darren Waller didn't stay healthy last year, so they have 3 tight ends that can play the position.
Mm-hmm.
I think Mayer is going to actually surprise a lot of people. We talked about how much Jimmy G likes his tight ends. You have 2-3 guys that can be serious pass catchers with the ball in their hands. I think Jimmy G's underrated. He passed his medicals, so that whole story was, kind of bizarre that he wasn't going to pass the medicals and the physical. But I think he fits into this offense really well. Kind of what they want to do. He knows this offense. From his time with the Patriots. So yeah, this is going to be one of those teams where if Josh Jacobs doesn't play, if he sits out, I think this team's going to struggle a lot because their identity is to run the football and play action off of it. And it's where Jimmy G's been the most successful in his career is when he has a strong running attack and is able to play action off of that. If we're going to ask him to just play in shotgun and try to just go out duel people, they're going to lose a lot of games. And I don't think that's what they want to do. I think if they're going to do that, they'd better off just playing the young guy with Aiden O'Connell and seeing what they have in him. But there's too much talent on this team for them to do that. Like, I think that they are in a kind of a win now mode. You have two, I would say, top end receivers. I think Jacoby Myers has that talent there. Is he a top 10 receivers, top 15 receiver? No. Hunter Renfrow is a great slot receiver. And you have a number 5 guy that we have ranked in Devontae Adams. Like, they have quality guys there. This defense, and let me be very clear about this give up so many points and they cannot cause turnovers. They can't stop anything in the passing game. So they're going to be playing from behind it. And if they can't control the line of scrimmage, and if they can't run the football properly and efficiently, then I don't see this team being very good, which means it's good for fantasy perspective because you're going to have a lot of receivers catching a lot of balls.
Yeah, but I agree with you on the defensive side of stuff. So here's my only opinion in what you say. The team needs to run the ball effectively for Jimmy G to be effective. That's been shown. He has loved his tight ends when he's played there, but we are having a small sample size. I mean, he had Gronk for when he had to fill in for Tom Brady, and then he had Kittle, 2 fantastic tight ends in terms of athleticism and ability, and they both shown they could do it without Jimmy G as well. I don't see that kind of talent there, except Michael Mayer, but I just don't see him breaking through early and often for the Raiders. So I want Devontae Adams here.
They said the same thing about Kittle, though, when he was a rookie. And look what he did his rookie year.
Yeah, but it was a different offense. It was a different offense, and it was also a different – I mean, listen, Shanahan, completely different situation.
It was, but there's going to be aspects of that. So I like Mayer. I've been on record as saying I like Mayer late in the draft as a tight end, as a sleeper tight end this year. But I wanted to ask you, like, all right, if Josh Jacobs does not play this year, where do you take Zamir White?
If he doesn't, if we know he's not playing at all this year, period, or are we saying
Josh
like
Jacobs holds out?
If he holds out, and we know he's holding out for the entire year,
out. Correct. He does not sign a franchise tag. He's holding out. Where do you take Zamir White?
If he's holding out and there's a chance he signs after week 1 or something, I'm not taking him that early at all. But if he holds out and it's for the entire season, I'm taking a shot at Zamir White, probably where you'd see in a running back 2 range in probably 6th round, I'd say. Because I just think at that point, like, to put your eggs in the Zamir White basket is a little bit iffy. The guy was not a all-around 3-down back at Georgia. He was a 5-star recruit coming out of high school, has had multiple ACL injuries, I believe. But in college, he split time with these other flashier running backs that were able to do stuff out of the backfield. I don't like anybody else behind him, to be honest with you. So I would take a shot on him.
Yeah, you like Amir Abdullah?
No. That's what I'm saying. I would take a shot on him. Maybe 6th round. Like, the earliest I would go would be 5th round. And if that's because I'm at the 1, 2, 3 pick and he's not going to make it back to me in the 6th round, and I want my second running back there or somebody, and I don't like any of the other options, but it would be situational in that case. Otherwise, 6 is the earliest I'm taking him.
I'll say this about the Raiders. Let's more specifically Devontae Adams. All right, I'm so glad I'm going to be in the top 4 picks because I have a feeling this year that Devontae Adams is going to drop in drafts, and this is like we still have him ranked as our 5th best fantasy receiver, but I have a feeling a lot of people are just going to be like, I don't want a piece of this, and he might get drafted maybe in the early 2nd round.
I think I could see him going mid-2nd round. Yeah, I could see him going mid-2nd round because people start to get spooked.
I would see people like drafting Diggs over him, and like CeeDee Lamb over him.
Which you could argue those, but you could argue all those guys there.
I could, but like I'm really glad I'm not in that middle range of guys to have to make that decision
to make that pick.
If he's there in the 2nd round, if I'm picking 1, 2, or 3, and he's there in the 2nd round for me, like, all right, cool. Like, I feel great about that pick.
Yeah.
But do you feel great if you're the 7th pick and Tyreek's off the board and Cooper Kupp's off the board and Chase is off the board and Jefferson's off the board?
And you're sitting there and you don't like the running backs around you either.
You're sitting there and you have Chubb, Henry, and Devontae Adams. Like, what are you doing?
Well, I'm taking Chubb in that case because
I'm probably going Chubb.
He's the only one
right.
But again, you talk about consistency. You know, to me, Devontae Adams has proven it too as well. So
I know. I'm just saying I'm glad that I'm not in that position. I'm glad that the way we chose our draft order has me in the top 3 pick.
Yeah, I mean, listen, without Aaron Rodgers in his career, he obviously had a fantastic season last year. He had 13? What did he have? 14 touchdowns, 13 touchdowns? Last year, fantastic season. But you can go back to 2017, 2017 and 2021. 2021 without Aaron Rodgers. He had a 126-yard game on 8 catches. He had a 2-touchdown performance on 10 catches, 84 yards. He had another 82 yards and a touchdown, 90 yards and a touchdown. But he also had some duds.
He was a stud last year.
He also had some duds as well. Well, it's not last year. I'm talking about 2017 when there was a chunk of time without Aaron Rodgers there. And so I'm just saying that season in 2017 was the only other sample size besides a 1 game in 2021 where he didn't have Aaron Rodgers. And those games, it was probably, I'd say 1, 2, 3, 4. It was probably 50-50 games he performed well and 50-50 not. And I'm not going to go back and look at who was throwing him the ball there. That being said, I have confidence that this guy's got the ability to break inside the top 5 finish again this year, even without him. So I like him.
I do too. I'm thankful I'm not in that second tier of picks in the middle of the draft where like I have to make the decision whether I want, Chubb, Henry, or him. And then Jonathan Taylor, and then have the choice on CeeDee Lamb. Like if he's there again in the 2nd round, like I think that's great value for him. You're getting a guy that slipped down to you, but like I because of Jimmy G there, I have real hesitation with drafting him ahead of some other guys, especially in other positions. Like I would take Kels over him.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Kels to me is another one. When you're in that 6, 7, 8, 9 range, and you're choosing between taking a receiver or running back, or Travis Kels, you sit there and you think to yourself, who's off the board, and who's left on the board that I have confidence week in and week out is going to perform as a top pick for me, and that's who you got to pick. So we talk about Chubb, we talk about Henry. Devontae Adams is going to have that question mark this year for sure. He didn't have it last year because people were so stoked about him with Derek Carr, back to college days. He's a gunslinger, all this stuff. And that's great. And it worked out in favor of Devontae Adams. It didn't work out in favor of Carr. But to me, I just think at the end of the day, Travis Kelce in that position would be even a better choice just because he's consistent year in, year out. It's a top 2 option. But you're right. I am waiting to see where Devontae Adams falls in drafts, especially our draft, because, again, if you and me are probably going to be a top 3 pick for our league here. And if he falls down into that second round, I'd be an idiot not to take him there, because what other receiver are you going to find at the end of the second round that's going to have a caliber as him?
Right.
You know what I mean? So, I mean, you look at Devontae Adams, week 16. Let me pull up his stats.
Stidham was playing, and he had 2 touchdowns.
He had a massive game that game.
Yeah, but the other 2 games the other 2 games he didn't do well at all. So I mean, yeah, we're talking like small sample size, but like he had 1 out of 3 games that without Derek Carr where he was an elite guy, and the other 2 games he was not just not elite, like he disappeared.
Yeah, no, I mean, week 17 was Stidham. He didn't have any touchdowns, and it was against Kansas City. It was a tough game. They lost 31-13. He still had 9 targets, 5 catches for 73 yards. So, those aren't, terrible numbers. I mean, but you're right, though. Week 16, that San Francisco game, which lost me the championship against you because McCaffrey had to keep playing and playing and playing, in a 37-34 loss for the Raiders. He had 7 catches for 153 and 2 touchdowns. So
that was a week after. Week 17 was our.
Oh, you're right. That was the week after. You're right.
But I still smoked you.
But you look at everything combined here. He's had multiple 100-yard games last year with Derek Carr. He had a game with 17 targets. He had a streak of 5 weeks in a row of 11 or more targets. That's what you want out of a wide receiver 1. I don't see those targets changing. I see them being consistent. I see Jimmy Garoppolo needing a go-to receiver. And as much as you want to say like, oh, Jimmy G's going to love the type of receiver that, Hunter Renfrow may be, or what's his name who came over from the Patriots? Why am I drawing a blank? Jacoby Myers. Because of their short routes and quickness and all that, you can't knock that Jimmy G's going to want to throw to his stud veteran wide receiver. So I'm taking a chance on him again. Though I don't. If you're at the end of the draft, my only advice is make a tiers list based on your rankings. Take a look at where you have guys, and don't sit there shooting yourself in the foot by trying to take a chance on a guy. If you have Devontae Adams, a tier above, or the number 1 guy in his tier, and the other 2 guys are sitting there, and you're like, do I go with AJ Brown? Do I go with Devontae Adams? Do I go with all the guys in this list? Whoever's highest ranked above them, take them, because that's where you're going to be. You know what? I had him ranked there. It was my decision. I liked him there. I made that choice. Otherwise, you're going to sit there going back and forth, and you're going to take all the time on the clock to just make a pick, and it may be the wrong one, may not be the one that you really, really wanted. So that's my advice on a situation with Devontae Adams this year. If everybody above him is already picked, go for him. If you still got people ranked above him and you have more confidence in those guys, take the Stephon Diggses. Take the A.J. Browns. So Vegas has Vegas at a 6.5 wins this year.
Fair enough.
Last year I believe they hit the 6-win mark. They were 6-11. They had a bunch of games, especially that Patriots game. The Patriots win gave them this a win, but there were a lot of games on the other end where if you took their record, I believe I saw a stat last year. If you took their record and all 1-score games that were losses for them were then wins, they would have led the AFC. That's how many close games they had. So to me, I like the over on the 6. I think they can hit a 7-win game here at the least. Again, the Broncos aren't anybody to write home about. The Chargers always find ways to give up games as well, no matter who they have coaching for them. And they give some teams, I mean, look at the hard time they gave San Francisco with a backup quarterback. They give teams a hard time because they're still playmakers, like you said, on this team. So I would take the over on that one.
This also feels like a bait bet. Feels like a bait bet. Like 6 wins, 6.5 wins. They're going to get 7. They're going to get 7. They're going to get 5.
Yeah.
No, they're going to. I'd probably take the under. I'd probably take the under on this. I think, you kind of start off this section talking about how you like 3 of the 4 teams. This is the team we don't like. And, if the other 3 teams are going to be good teams and you're going to have playoff contenders of the other teams, then someone's going to be really bad in that division. And this is it. And I
Well,
think that they're going to.
I mean, listen, they play other team. I mean, they're playing Green Bay with Jordan Love at prime time this year. They're playing Chicago if they can keep Justin Fields in check. They played the New York Giants.
You're hating on Chicago a lot. Just wait
I
till we
am.
get to that. Wait till
No,
we get
well,
to the
when we get to
north.
that, I am. But they play Pittsburgh. They open the season against Denver. I mean, I feel like they can sneak, a thing here and there. Like I said, Los Angeles has a way of losing games to people when they shouldn't lose games.
Again,
And they play Indianapolis.
Let me reiterate this.
So
That let me pull my let me pull. We talked about Hard Knocks, right? Let me pull one of my favorite players from that era of the Jets, and that his name is Mr. Bart Scott. Okay, their defense is 25th in the league, and they can't stop a nosebleed. All right, they are bad. This is a Swiss cheese defense. They are a bad defense, and they can't stop the passing game. And look at who's in their division. Like, if you can't stop the passing game, and you have to face Kansas City and the Chargers.
No, it's true. And I'm not saying the division. I'm saying I'm even saying that they say they split with Denver and somehow split with the Chargers and don't win a game again. It's only 2 wins in the division. I'm saying their out of division games aren't like the hardest schedule for anybody out there. So I could see them getting 7 wins. I don't see them getting more than 7, but I could see them edging out 7 wins. Again,
I'm gonna say 5.
Okay.
I'm gonna say 5.
Well, let's finish up with our last team, and this is my favorite team in the division, especially for fantasy because there are so many options and so many weapons that I don't think you go wrong with a new offensive coordinator that should increase and yield higher scoring, which is what their problem was last year, and that's the LA Chargers. Last year you had Justin Herbert throwing for 25 passing touchdowns, which was the lowest of his career so far. He was on an upward trajectory from his rookie season to his sophomore to his junior last year, and it fell off the shelf. His passing yardage didn't, and the passing volume didn't. It was the scoring. And the play calling was terrible for that team as well. I've said it, and I'm going to say it again until I'm blue in the face, it's Herbert MVP this year. He's going to throw for 5,000. He's going to throw for 40 touchdowns. He's going to do what Mahomes did last year because he was on the brink of doing it anyway. When you throw for 4,800 yards, you don't throw 30 plus touchdowns, that's not on the quarterback at that point. That's on the play calling and the offensive coordinator. I love Austin Eckler because he's in a contract year. He's going to, the stake of where the contracts are for running backs, I don't know if he's going to even be paid, but you better believe he's going to play his ass off. And he has for the past 2 seasons. I expect him to do it for a 3rd season here. I think he had 20 total touchdowns the year before. He had 18 last year. He's going to be above 15 total touchdowns against this year, which is going to be one of the top, if not the top running backs in the league. And then I love Keenan Allen. He's a tried and true guy. His small sample size, outside of injuries last year, were fantastic. He was putting up great numbers, and his rapport with Herbert is fantastic. The one that kind of sticks for me is Mike Williams. Do I want to go take a chance on him where his ADP is? Or do I want to go with the rookie and upside in Quentin Johnston in the fact that, hey, Mike Williams may be hurt because he's on and off the field a lot. And this rookie's got big playability as well. And that's probably the route I would go in the draft. Stick away from the Mike Williams, take a chance on Quentin Johnston. And then, again, a dart throw tight end. If you fade tight end, Gerald Everett's a great option there too as well. He proved it last year. Finished, I think, tight end 14. He had an injury. He was out for a couple games, but he was on pace to be a tight end 11, I think, at the end of the season, which if you're looking for a dart throw on a guy, that's a perfect opportunity. He was used a lot in scheme plays and the red zone. So,
yeah, this is, again, I think they're going to be a top 5 offense in the league. I would agree with you. I don't necessarily think that he's going to be an MVP. My dark horse MVP candidate is Aaron Rodgers, but
yeah, I would back that too, but I chose mine.
Yeah. But Herbert, he has all the weapons there. And the biggest thing for me is can this receiving core stay healthy? And if they can stay healthy, and that's what I think hurt Herbert last year on the 27 touchdowns. You saw the yardage just was phenomenal, but I think it really hurt losing Keenan Allen for multiple games, losing Mike Williams for multiple games, and them overlapping on those games, right? Mike Williams comes back is back for 1 week or a couple plays in that game and then is out again. Having Quentin Johnston, I would agree with you on your rankings, by the way. So I think Keenan Allen has kind of slipped in drafts to where you can get him in the late third, early
Yeah, he's going
late
fourth
third,
round. Yeah, early fourth.
fourth round. And that I think is great value. If I had to rank them based on my value, Keenan Allen's one because I still love his value there. Quentin Johnston's two, and then Mike Williams is three. Mike Williams
Mm-hmm.
is a little bit too rich for me. For the same reasons that you just said. I think that I'd rather take a risk on the rookie who's going to come in, who I can get later in the draft, a couple of rounds after Mike Williams, and I don't have to go in and overdraft on Williams if he's proven time and time again he cannot stay healthy, and these soft tissue injuries that keep him out multiple weeks. And Everett I really like too. I think Parham's another guy that he's not going to get drafted, but which is great because if you go and just take a flyer on a tight end late, he might be a waiver wire guy you might add in the first couple weeks of the season and be able to hold on to. But Parham, I think, is an athletic freak, and the whole reason I think Everett stepped it up last year is because Parham was injured and wasn't healthy. So yeah, there's really it's hard for me to look at the depth chart and be like, I don't like this player, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like they still if you look at the backup receivers and Joshua Palmer and Jalen Guyton, I still like those guys. Like if there were injuries to Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, I think both those guys are viable options from a fantasy perspective. If Eckler gets hurt, Josh Kelly and Isaiah Spiller are great fantasy, could be great fantasy options there. If Everett is the starter and Parham's a great backup to have there, it's hard for me to look at this depth chart and be like, yeah, I don't like that guy. No, they have talent all across this offense, which is why we think that they're going to be a top 5 offense this year.
Yeah. Well, this is one of those
teams doesn't stay healthy.
Well, I was going to say, this is one of those teams that when you look at the depth chart and there's injuries happen, people are pouncing on players from this team. It's not like one of those other ones where it's like, oh, the number one running back got hurt and nobody's really wanting to spend the money in their fab on another running back from that squad.
Saquon gets hurt, who wants Breida, right?
Exactly. Nobody's going to want to jump on a backup wide receiver. If Devontae Adams gets hurt, is anybody really going to try and jump on one of the Raiders receivers? It's not one of those teams. This one has depth across the board and led by a fantastic quarterback, who to me. And the reason why I say MVP each time I talk about him, he had 5,000 yards the year before. He had less interceptions last year than he did his 5,000 yard season. So he's already hit his 5,000 yard mark before. But when you look at that offense, this tells you why it's going to go through the roof for them again this year. Last year, the Chargers were the third highest in passing yardage in terms of the NFL. Only the Vikings and Chiefs were above them. Vikings threw for 30 touchdowns. Chiefs threw for 41 touchdowns. Here's the biggest number that it was to me that was alarming, was the Chargers had a 6.7 yards per attempt. Nobody besides the Buccaneers, who had Tom Brady, who again threw for 4,000 yards and only 26 touchdowns. Those two teams in the top 10 were 6.7 and 6.3 respectively yards per attempt. You are not going to score many touchdowns. I'm surprised they threw for 4,700. It was purely volume play they threw for over 700 attempts. But if that number is going to 100% go up, especially with Quentin Johnston and the receivers healthy, if they get that number up into the 7 or the 8s where the Dolphins and the Chiefs were, you're going to see 5,000 yards for Herbert for sure, and you're going to see more touchdowns because that number in alone is so tiny. And then the other one was their first down rate. Well, everybody else was 36% or higher in their first down rate, except for the Buccaneers and the Chargers at 30. They were both at 32%. You need to convert first downs
a little bit misleading
as well.
Too.
I don't think it's as misleading as you think, though. I really don't think you think.
You have 100 receptions from Austin Eckler, right? So
yeah, but you look at Austin Eckler's yards per reception. I'll pull that up for you real quick. Keep talking, but
please do. But I'm just saying, there's at least 100 targets or 100 receptions that are shorter targets, right? they're dump offs or out of the backfield. But they do like I that number is kind of a little bit shocking to me because
his yards per reception.
Back on watching the Chargers.
Yeah.
Let me finish my point.
Sorry, go ahead.
If you think back at the games and watching last year, they always seem to be throwing the ball like downfield, and there's a lot of that they didn't connect on, right? You look at like the games when like DeAndre Carter was in there and Josh Palmer was in there, and there's a lot of down the field targets. So to see like a sub 10 yards per reception is a little bit shocking. But
it's yards per attempt.
So
yeah, but I mean they had 711 attempts. So it's a ton of attempts, but you look at yards per reception for Eckler, and it was 6.7. So it was that's what it was there. So to me, I think that number should go up big time. Yards per, just because they threw for 711, both teams threw for over 700. It should drop it, obviously, just sheer fact that they threw for over 700 passes. But the Bengals threw for 610, 650 for the Chiefs, and they were both at 7.4, and the Chiefs had 8.1 yards per attempt. And to me, the Chiefs weren't airing the ball out either, and the completion percentage was higher for the Chargers, so it wasn't like they just caught more balls. To me, it just comes down to the fact that they ran a lot of tight end screens that weren't that effective. They ran a lot of wide receiver screens with some of those fast guys that weren't effective. They weren't effective with trying to run some screens to Eckler that often as well. So I think a lot of stuff came down to the fact that they weren't pushing the ball far enough downfield, and a lot of the times it would be like 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9, and they're throwing a 5-yard play and expecting yards after catch that weren't coming. So that hurt them a lot as well. So I just think if the yards per attempt are that low, that factors in. Well, that factors in the 32% of the incomplete passes had to be short passes as well. They weren't deep passes.
Yeah.
So
yeah, like I said, like that's hard. That's a number that's hard for me to think of because like every kind of memory that I have of watching them last season, it was like constant deep shots down the field.
Well, their highlight reel for sure was.
Well, and the problem is, and we've talked about this, and kind of like their play calling is they weren't stepping on the throat of their opponents.
Yeah.
Like they'd get a lead, and they did have some comebacks. They had the comeback against the Colts where they were down 27-0 or 31-0 at halftime, and they came back and won that game. Or was that the Vikings?
That was the Vikings.
The Vikings did that. Yeah, they would get leads in games in first halves and then just never be able to finish them out. And they'd play conservative. It's like the Falcons in the Super Bowl. It's if you're going to play conservative, like you better get first downs, and then you go on a 3 and out, or you go on, just move the chains once and then have to punt it away. Actually, do you have the numbers in front of you on seeing what their punt rate is on how many times they punted?
I can pull it up.
Because I mean, like, yeah, if they went full throttle and just like hammered their opponent,
they were number 10.
And yeah, so how can you have a top 5 offense you're throwing for almost 5,000 yards and be 10th in the league in punting?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of 2022, they had a 4.3 punt attempts per game, which that's. Everybody's around 3, 4, and some 5. Only a couple 5. That was Houston, Tennessee, and Denver, which makes sense. But I mean, you still 4.3. You were right there with the New York Giants, LA Rams, and Minnesota Vikings, and the Colts. And then at the bottom of the barrel for the least amount, not bottom of the barrel, top of the barrel, least amount, you had Buffalo, Detroit, Kansas City, all at 3.1. And 3.2 for Kansas City, and Philadelphia's 3.3. So it just goes to show it's a whole punt less per game makes a huge difference, and that just goes to that. That just showed that stat I had earlier in terms of
down conversion,
first down conversion, like first downs percentage in terms of their passes. Their overall first down percentage from all their passes was they had 232 first downs on 485 completions.
Yeah,
they had a 32% first down completion. That was 4 points less than the Vikings, who were ahead of them, and it was almost 10% points less than the Kansas City Chiefs. Like, you're not winning ball games when you're not converting first downs. I mean, the Raiders showed it. They were 32%. The Bucs were 32%.
Well,
the Jets last year were 30%.
Yeah. It's such a difference in comparison. And you look at the teams that were around them in terms of punts per game, and then you look at the elite teams. They're really, truly elite teams. And look how little that they punt per game.
Yeah.
And that's the difference is if you're going to get into that kind of category, if you're going to be considered an elite offense in this league, you can't be punting the ball 3-4 times a game. Like, that's scoring, or at least driving down the field to kick a field goal. Like, and that's the thing is, like, you cannot manage a game conservatively, and you need to be aggressive throughout the entire game, and that's why they lost in the playoffs. You get a 27-point lead against a team, and you blow it because you cannot just go out there. They look at the play call in the second half. They're just running the football and trying to just burn the clock. It's like, no, score again on them and score again. Well,
you said it here. Last year they weren't putting their foot on the throats of their opponents. They were third in the division in points for. And they weren't even third. They weren't even number one in the division in points against. The Raiders were. They were second in the division in points against at 384. So
Swiss cheese defense, John. We've established this.
No, I'm not talking about the Raiders. I'm talking about the Chargers themselves. They had 391 points for, 384 points against. They had a 7-point differential, a 1 touchdown differential on the season. Like, you're not a good playoff and a championship team when you do that. And when you look at their season and you look at the games that they won a lot of games close, but the games they lost 27-24 to Kansas City. They lost 38-10 to the Jacksonville in week 3. Here's the crazy thing to me. You lost 37-23 to the Seattle, 22-16 to San Fran, 30-27 to Kansas City, and then 27-20 to the Raiders, which was a surprising one to me. I looked at Herbert's stats last year, and this just shows where they're not putting their foot on the throats of their opponents. Herbert did not have a 400-yard game last year at all. Like, that to me is the biggest surprising stat. That guy has an arm and has the ability to do it, and they throw for 711 attempts, and he doesn't have one 400-yard game. He has multiple, like almost every game last season, he had a receiver at 90 to 100 yards in the game. Only one game was that Denver game, 19-16 overtime, where the leading receiver had 57 yards. But besides that, somebody had over 100 yards, and he wasn't doing it. And it just goes show that they were not. It wasn't like Eckler was running for 100 yards a game. He only had 200-yard games last year. Yeah. He had in week 5 and in week 17. So they just weren't pushing the ball downfield, taking shots, and they weren't throwing the ball with like deep playability. And I think that's going to change this year. I say maybe when
we started talking about this team, and I brought it up, is if the big if for this question for this team is, can that receiving core stay healthy? And if they can, this is going to be an elite offense. If they can't, this is where they struggle every year. Is like when you have games that are without Mike Williams and Keenan Allen, and this is why you go and draft a receiver. Is receiver the real need? No. But this is why you go and draft a receiver in the first round, because the other two guys there can't stay healthy.
That's true. It's true. I mean, you look at when it comes down to the games where Herbert was under 300 yards passing. He still had Allen. He still had Mike Williams. But like the big ones, like he had 196 against San Fran. Carter was his leading receiver. 238. Palmer was his leading receiver. But he had other ones where it's 212 and it was Mike Williams. But I mean, here's the thing though that you got to like about Herbert and you got to like about this offense. When you go into a wild card match and you do have your receivers with you, the leading receiver in that wild card match was Gerald Everett, 109 receiving yards that game. So he can push the ball around to other people, but I agree, for them to get over the hump and this team to score more points, at least one or both of Allen and Williams need to be healthy for the entire season. They can't have only 6 games played together. You need to have at least
right.
9 games of them playing together. But again,
Right.
Quentin Johnston kind of fills the void of one of those guys being out, and that's going to help.
So
So
you don't want that.
no, I'm still drafting Keenan Allen like he's not going to be injured, period, because I think the guy's fantastic, and I would be drafting Mike Williams too with the onus that he's not going to get injured either. I just like the opportunity to draft Quentin Johnston for a guy who plays a similar role, and an opportunity where there may be 3 wide receiver sets out there. They may not even line up. Yeah, so why not have it take a chance on a guy who's got some big playabilities, a little bit younger. So Vegas has this line. I mean, let's real quick before I talk about Vegas, let's talk about Kellen Moore and the fact that he in the past 2 seasons has brought the Cowboys to top team in the NFL in terms of scoring. That's the other thing that I love to see is like they're going to find opportunities to score. They're not going to find opportunities to just skate by. I think, if they want to be a premier team in the NFL, they're in a win now mode right now. They've got the players to do it. Kellen Moore could be the guy to tip the scale for them in terms of point scoring. You may see this team who I think the highest point total in a game last year was 34. The highest they scored all season. I could see this getting into the 40s a couple games next year.
Well, this is one of the reasons that I like Quentin Johnston this year too. Is if you look back at like CeeDee Lamb's rookie year, when he had him there, when you still had Amari Cooper on the other side, if Keenan Allen see Amari Cooper, and Mike Williams and Quentin Johnston can step into that second role or step into a slot role, how he used CeeDee Lamb out of the slot is very similar to Quentin Johnston. And I think Quentin Johnston could have a fantastic year this year. Yeah. There's a lot of rookie receivers that I think are in really good scenarios. And I said early on, like, I think Jordan Addison, if he wasn't living the life fast and furiously, he's in a great scenario. But I think Quentin Johnston is right there with him. And even like Zay Flowers. But like I think there's a lot of guys that rookies can step up, and they're in really good scenarios because they weren't drafted to be the guy. Like you look at Garrett Wilson last year, it's like Garrett Wilson was and Olave were drafted to be the guys, right? Mm-hmm. These guys weren't. There's already established number ones on those teams. Well, minus Baltimore, but there's two guys ahead of Flowers. But Quentin Johnston isn't coming over and saying, Keenan Allen, like give me the keys to the car. You're riding shotgun. Like, no, it's Keenan Allen's show there. Mike Williams is still there, so Quentin Johnston can have the time to develop going against lesser coverage. If he's a top talent, he's going against number 2 corners, number 3 corners sometimes. And same thing with Addison in Minnesota. Like Addison is never going to get the top corner coverage.
Yeah.
And that's why those guys are in really good scenarios. And I think I think Quentin Johnston can be in kind of that CeeDee Lamb role. And yeah, you're right. The Dallas's offense did emerge as a top offense in the league in terms of scoring, but he has the same kind of look at Pollard last year and how they used him. Now he has a better Pollard with Eckler.
Yeah.
So I still think, that's why Eckler, again, this is why Eckler is going to be the top 2 picks in the draft, or top 3 picks in the draft, because he's going to be used a hell of a lot, and he's a great receiver. Like you look at the offenses that these players, the top players, are being drafted from, and those offenses are good. San Francisco, the Vikings, and the Chargers, they have to be good.
Well, Kellen Moore, just the last note on Kellen Moore here is, and the Chargers. Chargers last year were 12th in points per game. They were 8th in yards per game, it's not terrible, but they were 21st in yards per play and 13th in touchdowns per game. That's where their season kind of fizzled out. When you're 21st in yards per play, but you're 8th in yards per game, like that doesn't add up. Goes back
to the inefficiency.
Yeah, exactly. So, but you look at what Kellen Moore was able to do with the Cowboys. He led them to number 4 in the yards per game, number 4 in points per game, number 10 in yards per game, and he was number 1 in red zone scoring offense. So I think he could hit all those numbers again, but with the Chargers and the weapons they have, and Herbert at quarterback, who I believe is a better quarterback than what's his name over in Dallas? Why am I drawing a blank now? It's late. Dak Prescott.
Dak.
To me, that's where I see him making his money with the Chargers. And again, like you said, he's got a fantastic running back, a fantastic quarterback, veteran wide receivers, plus a young rookie stud wide receiver, and a good veteran tight end. It's everything you want, and they all stay healthy. This team, should go through the roof. But that's for any team. If all stay healthy.
And a fairly solid defense. There's some really good players if Bosa stays healthy.
Derwin James is arguably the best at his position, too. I mean, like, they've got
Samuel
players.
Jr., right? Like they have
Khalil Mack.
Like they have players on this team.
Yeah.
So this is a team that should be good. They should be really good. I don't necessarily think that Herbert's a dark horse for MVP for me, but I like this team and I like pretty much all the players. Like there's such a big difference between how I view the Chargers receiver room versus the Kansas City Chiefs receiving room.
Correct.
It's a huge difference where like I want a piece of the number 3 on the Chargers, but I don't want. I'm fighting to find a reason to have the number 1 on the best offense in the league.
That's not Kels.
Big difference and big discrepancy. That's not Kels. Yeah, that's not.
Well, how about this? Let's put a league MVP bet on here. Aaron Rodgers wins the MVP. I treat you to dinner, your choice, wherever. Herbert wins MVP. You take me to dinner.
Morton's. I want Morton's Steakhouse, all right?
Morton's. So that's virtual shake on that one. Virtual shake
on dinner.
There you go. Dinner. All right.
Dinner.
Well, that being said, you like this team. How well do you like them? Vegas has them at 9.5 wins on the season. They had 10 last year. Should have had more, in my opinion. But do you see them hitting the 10 spot this year?
Yeah, I'll take the over on that.
I would take the over on that too as well. Again, you still play some other teams that are tougher. You play a tough New England defense. You play Baltimore in prime time, but you do play Tennessee. You do play Minnesota, who's beatable as well in defense, and you play Dallas, Denver. Yeah, I could see 10 again here, and I could see this year them splitting with Kansas City. I don't see Kansas City taking 2 away from them this year either. So, well, that's our AFC.
You did say when we talked about the Raiders that they could split with the Chargers.
They could. Yeah, there's a chance. That's what I said. There's always a chance they could split the Chargers. I gave the Raiders the benefit on that one. So there's a chance. I still see them hitting 10. There's some tough games out there, but a lot are winnable, and they proved it last year. So that's our AFC West breakdown. Again, like and subscribe if you enjoy the content. Hit the notification button so you can get notified when we drop all our new videos. And tune in for our next episode when we talk about the NFC West with the Niners, Cardinals, Seahawks, and Rams and our thoughts on those teams. Tune in next week. Thanks for tuning in.